Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Royer, and I'm Head of Community Services at the Lucy Robbins Wells Library. And you are now part of our, it happened last year in real estate program. I'm admitting people in at the same time. So if I can just ask, Cathy, can you just admit people while I am speaking right now? Okay. All right. So again, I'm Michelle. Welcome from the Lucy Robbins Wells Library. I am here tonight with 3 special guests and a 4th one kind of in the background a little bit. And so we have on tonight, Cathy Rossini Lapierre, and we have Caitlin Richard, and we have Louis Nero, and we also have in the darkness a little bit there, Laura Campbell. So the 3 ladies are from Laza Properties, and Louis is from Magnified Home Inspections. And so with everything that went on last year in real estate, it just went crazy. And so all of a sudden, you know what's going on, and then all of a sudden it's complete chaos. So what I wanted to do is kind of find out, one day I'm looking out the window and it's a Thursday morning. I thought, oh, somebody's having some kind of meeting, at their house during COVID. And all of a sudden there were more cars and more cars and more cars. And in like 4 days, I think they had like 60 something people go through and like 30 something offers. And it was just like this craziness. And then we all know what happened after that. So I'd like you to just tell us a little bit about that. Louis, I'd like to really hear from you, like about home inspections and when you should have one. Is it just when you're buying or selling a house? And anything you can tell us about that. I know there's like a buyer's inspector and a seller's inspector, and how to find the right piece to that. So I'm going to hand it over to Cathy, and we're just going to have fun tonight. Please, again, keep yourself muted. If you have a question, we can just see your hand maybe go up in the chat, or if it's that quiet, you can just unmute yourself and we would be happy to answer any questions you might have. I will ask the presenters to put their information in the chat, so you will have it after if you are interested in finding out any question that you think of later or something like that. I'm sure they'd be happy to help you. All right, Cathy, take it away.
Hi, guys. Let me make sure. Are we unmuted? Yes. Okay. So Cathy Rossini Lapierre and Caitlin, and we have Laura on screen. She's off camera, but she is up in Maine working on a cool project that maybe she'll tell you about later if we have time. We are based out of Newington. And between the 3 of us, we have different levels of experience, but we've got well over 20 years of real estate experience between the 3 of us. And we love Newington and Berlin. Caitlin's out of Berlin. So I guess we'll start from the beginning with COVID taking us all by surprise. Louis is one of our home inspectors that we use quite a bit. He's also local to town. We're part of the chamber, which is why we got invited to do this today. And I guess starting from the point that I don't know if any of us saw this coming when COVID hit, that real estate was going to take off the way it did. So for those of you, this is so hard to do this in Zoom. Like I want to ask questions and see hands, but I don't know if I can do that. So most people, oh God. All right. So many things happened when COVID hit. It drove up the price of housing. It drove up the costs of rental. People wanted getaway properties. Mm-hmm. So I feel like materials, so many things got impacted, contractors, and all of it snowballed into driving up the costs of real estate. And it was a good and a bad thing. For those of you that have had to buy or sell, depending on which side of it was, it went well for you or it made it more difficult for you. Some of the data that we have, like the way we judge markets is how long stuff stays on the market. So looking at I believe tonight we have Berlin, Rocky Hill, Wethersfield, and Newington with us. So that's where we drew data from. In 2019, before the pandemic hit, houses took approximately 50 to 60 days to sell. 2020 hit, and we were down to 37 to 51 days on the market before a house sold. Starting with last year, houses were on the market from 15 to 25 days and they were gone. You see the signs go up and right away the sold signs come out, and it has driven the prices up. Keeping in mind that Connecticut was one of the last states in the country to recover from the crash of 6, 7, and 8, when everybody remembers that all the housing took a nosedive and people were underwater in their homes. Connecticut was one of the slowest to recover. So while it feels like the prices are going through the roof, we did not return to normal pricing for almost 10 or 11 years. So 18, 19, before houses were actually appraising for what they sold for back in 2006, 7, 8. People are also catching up with the appraisals.
We just actually learned that FHA, they've just changed their guidelines where first-time home buyers are not able to pay over the appraisal price, which is a common thing that has been happening.
So many things have changed with buying homes, and you hire a good realtor and you stack the deck in your favor. And we have some tricks up our sleeves, like when you take out a mortgage, the bank does an appraisal and tells you what it's worth. We can do something like having money come out of pocket and paying over what the appraiser says it's worth and being the offer that stands out. But we just had some FHA, which is the government agency for loans, told us we can't do that. So as of January, there are rules that are changed. So if you have good realtors, we learn all these things, we read about them, we keep up on them. Another problem that we're running into is everybody wants to waive home inspections when you buy. And this has been impacting Louis. So we can talk about what's going on with waiving a home inspection. What do you think? Should people waive home inspections?
So there's a lot of different aspects of that, but I'll go back to the whole FHA thing too. So there's a lot of rules for FHA to have things done to the house that will affect appraisals and stuff like that. So if you have loose or peeling paint, if you don't have handrails, that's big stuff that the FHA looks at. And if you don't have those right, it could affect an FHA buyer. So that's something to think about on a home inspection aspect too. So some people have been putting their house on market to sell it as is and not doing some of those stuff. And some of those could be barriers for the FHA. So there's different things out there too for that aspect. But yeah, so a lot of people have been skipping home inspections. We have been seeing some of that out there lately. And really the home inspections is out there for your best interest. Just like if you were to buy a car, you would want to make sure it's all mechanically sound before you buy it. That's really what the home inspection is for too, is just to protect you and make sure that you're buying something and know what you have for repair costs. If you're renting a home, a lot of people are not used to doing repairs. A lot of that stuff is done by the landlord. So if you're going to into a house, those are things that you're going to think about. So you have your monthly mortgage payment and you have to think about repairs to do to those houses too. That's going to affect what you're normally paying per month.
So I think, we wanted to address questions for people, and we're keeping an eye on the chat. So we can do one of two things. On the bottom of your screen, for those of you that are comfortable with Zoom, there's a little icon that you can raise your hand and it'll show up on the screen that you want to ask a question. So at any point, if you want to do that, we're happy to answer direct questions, because I think Michelle left this kind of wide open so we can talk about what's happened and we can talk about what's going to happen or what we think is going to happen. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, but we'll do our best to give you what we've seen in the market. So it's kind of fun to talk about all the craziness of the past year, and we'll tell you some stories, but if you have specific questions, either put them in the chat and we'll keep an eye on it, or raise your hand on the icon on the bottom of the chat, on the bottom of the screen, you can click a button. So the things with buyers, all the houses that go on the market, it does feel like there's multiple offers almost every single time. And it's difficult. It's hard. Most of my buyers, I feel like we have worked twice as hard to get homes for our buyers. So for every 10 offers we write, maybe 2 of them are successful or 4 of them are successful. You have really good seasoned agents, and we know a lot of the tricks to make things work. We can do escalation clauses where you're going to pay $1,000 over the next person in line. You're going to pay a little bit more than what the bank is telling you it's going to be worth, because the bank ultimately decides what it's worth, and they won't give you a mortgage for more than that. So you can pay a little bit out of pocket for that. We can do things like waive home inspections, though depends on the client. If it's a brand new person who's never had a home before, I don't want you waiving your home inspection, because you need to know what you're getting into. If it's a home that somebody took a lot of care in and has all the receipts for all the work they've done, maybe you can waive the home inspection. We just sold a condo. We helped somebody buy a condo, and we did not do a home inspection because it would help win the condo. And in that situation, heat and hot water were included. So the furnace belongs to the association, and it's not going to be the responsibility of the buyer. So there are times when it's appropriate to waive a home inspection, but we don't like to encourage that. You want to know everything you can find out. There's a lot of people flipping homes right now because they all think it's a wonderful market to do that, and it's not really right now. But there are hacks out there. And just because they put a fresh coat of paint on it doesn't mean they've done the homework behind that to make it a good purchase. So we're pedaling an awful lot harder to get homes for our buyers. So that's one thing that's changed. When you go to sell your house, people are asking, what should we do? Where should we spend our money? If we want to put our house on the market, there's not enough inventory. So right now, the sellers are kind of in the driver's seat. So I would not go out and spend an enormous amount of money to sell your house, because your taste may not be the taste of the buyer who's coming in there. But at the same token, the buyers are coming in and expecting stuff that they see on HGTV. So they want the agreeable gray, the white trim, the updated kitchen, the updated bath. So from both of those sides, and I think between social media and all the HGTV shows, everybody's, thinks they know how to navigate this, and they know what they want. They want it to look like it does on HGTV. So that also creates some problems. But when you're going to sell your house, we can offer you some staging guidance. We have stagers that we can rent furniture from to make your house look better. There's a lot of tools. If you hire a good agent, they should have a whole concierge of service. We can find you a painter. We can find you, handymen, contractors, which again, COVID has created a shortness of. Okay, so Pam asked a question. What are your thoughts on the likely rise in interest rates, and if that will change the current market conditions? I knew that question was coming.
Yes.
That's what's on everybody's minds, because it is already impacting people that we have that have not gone under contract yet. So
Interest rates are going up.
they're already starting.
Going
up.
They're already starting. I've got a brand new buyer who has not put an offer on a property yet. So the people who are already in contract, or at least have started talking to a lender, a lot of them have locked in rates.
Right.
So they're okay. So there's still a large percentage of buyers that are out there that have already started this process. And those buyers are still out there, and still at least 5-to-1 for each property. The rising interest rate is going to do 2 things. it is going to decrease the amount of money that a person has to spend. So somebody who could afford $150,000 house is probably only looking at 125 when it really starts to climb. It's going to be small increments to start.
Mhm.
I like to follow a lot of gurus on social media. They bring in the experts, they talk to the financial advisors, and they talk about how this is going to impact the market. And it may slow down a few people that aren't really ready, that are really taking every last penny out of their savings to purchase. It's going to slow down the market a tiny bit, maybe by the end of the year. It's not going to happen all at once. It's not going to happen this week when they, this goes up 1/4 of a point or whatever, it's going to go up. But the market is still so heavy on buyers that it's going to maybe bring it down to a little more of a normal level instead of it being outrageous. It's a good time for buyers to still be in the market, because for those of you young whippersnappers that don't remember or didn't know what your parents paid for interest rates, my parents bought at 12 and 13%. We bought, and I don't know when you bought.
Mine was about 9-10%.
9 or 10%. We bought in 2006 at 7%. So to me, 4 and 5 are still great interest rates.
Amazing.
So it really is. And it all has to be in perspective. But if you don't know anything else, everybody's freaking out because it's going up from 2.75 to 3. I think it's creeping towards 4 right now.
Yes, the 30 years, a little over 4% as of today.
So it seems scary to people who haven't experienced anything else, but it's still really good for loans. I think it's going to I don't know, Laura, I'm glad you're on with us. You tell me what you're thinking.
I'm amazed at the even thought of the 2.75%. So the young whippersnappers have been very lucky to have a rate like that. I think
Yeah.
18%, which was crazy back in the day.
Yeah.
So to have rates that are still under 5%, I wish that whoever was thinking, oh, should I buy now or should I wait? I wish they would have bought. But
Yeah.
still, a 4 or a 4% interest rate is still amazing. And I'm hoping that some of the, like you were just saying, it might bring it back to a normal, well, not normal, because normal back in the day, we would have over 100 houses for sale in Newington. I don't know what today's stat is, but it's just not even close to normal right now as far as buyers versus sellers.
So Caitlin, we were looking up data
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah, so for Newington right now, there's 16 homes and condos are included in the 16 are on the market right now, and 2 rentals.
And go through the other towns.
Rocky Hill has 6 and 4 rentals. Berlin has 21, and a couple of those were 55 and older communities as well, with 2 rentals as well. And then Weathersfield had 14 and 3 rentals.
So it always feels like there's a delay in the market compared to the information that everybody gets. So people are becoming aware of the fact that rates are rising. We've been telling them to put their houses on the market because we have so many buyers. And so there's always that lag in a group of people that are finally going to jump on the bandwagon. And in New England, well, in Connecticut at least, around the holidays, everything kind of takes a little bit of a dip. Everybody takes a little bit of a break and they enjoy the holidays. And the weather is usually less cooperative. This weather has been very different this winter. It's been a lot warmer than usual, so things are still happening. Yeah.
Really nice.
Well, I don't know, maybe it impacts your home inspections. I don't know. So it's starting so the spring season, oh God, it's hard to even talk about seasons anymore because the past 2 years have created such unconventional norms for real estate. It used to get quiet during the holidays and it slowed down some. And there's still a lot of people who are saying, I'll put it on in the spring. I'll put my house on in the spring. And there's a couple ways to look at that. In the past, it has been the most popular time to put houses on the market. It has been the most popular time for buyers to go out and start shopping because we don't want to go out in the snow. You don't want people tracking through your house after they've been walking in the yuck in the driveway.
Mhm.
But COVID changed that a little bit. And you also want to think about, if I'm going to list my house on the market, do I want to put it on the market when everybody else typically puts their house on the market? Or do I want to put it on the market now when shoppers are still shopping and there's less competition?
Mhm.
So there's the argument for putting houses on the market now before that mentality of we'll do it in the spring when the weather's nice and my plants are blooming and the pictures are going to look better. There is just such a high demand right now. Houses are still going for over asking if they are 80% updated, finished, in good shape.
Yeah.
You know, there are houses that sit and you have those sellers who think that buyers don't know any better and they're going to put them on for a ridiculous amount of money and see what the market is going to bear. And they're not really worth what they're putting them on the market for.
I could just add to that too. Some of the houses that we have seen too as a home inspector, they have been recently updated, and a lot of people think that because they've been recently updated, there's not that much stuff that could be possibly wrong with something. I just had one just recently. I just posted online. It was a basically redone bathroom, looked gorgeous, all the top end finishes. And I got into the basement and there was all termite damage underneath there.
Oh,
So they basically put on a brand new bathroom on foundation that's not really steady, and there's damage there, and that has to be done structurally. So that's a structural issue.
Mhm.
The other thing that I've seen too on some of these newer places, I saw one that had a brand new deck, and it was attached to all rotted ledger board going to the deck and almost kind of falling apart and pulling away from the house. So there's a lot of things that people see on these brand new remodeled houses and they think that they're all perfect, and there's a lot of stuff that's hidden, and they're very good at hiding stuff, and that's why an inspection is very important.
so maybe especially in this market where everybody thinks they're all flippers now. So because it's the hot thing to do and they either don't know what they're doing or they're cutting corners, or there wasn't the right tool or equipment that they needed and they cut corners with that.
Regarding the question that just came in.
Yes.
Probably read it. No, right?
Should I read it out loud? Let me read the
Sure.
question. I don't know if everybody sees it. With so many people spending over asking price in the last few years, do you see any similarities to what happened after 2008, where people will start owing more on the homes than what they are actually worth? Or overall, will homes maintain that value? Okay. I know where you're going, but I'll chime in. Go ahead, Laura.
This is completely different situation in 2008. If you
I'm
had a
sorry.
pulse in 2008, you could get a mortgage, and that was the problem. Right now, it is a supply and demand situation, and I'm not going to say it's a problem. It's just a situation that we're all dealing with, and I do not see this going away anytime soon. When COVID first started, or the pandemic, or whatever we're politically correct calling it, when it first started, I remember Cathy and I looking at each other like, oh my gosh, are we essential employees? Are we still selling homes? Or, are we still working? And in fact, we were essential, and we still are essential, and we're still hoping to sell homes, and we're hoping that the inventory is going to come back up again. So,
Laura, you're dropping in and out a little bit. I don't know if you're in motion, but you're dropping in and out.
sorry, I'm not in motion. I'm sitting here at this cute little desk. It's not a 2008 situation where the banks have failed us. It is a pandemic situation where people are reluctant to put their homes on the market. So it's a completely different issue that we're dealing with right now. And I feel that the issue is not going away anytime soon. And that we are still dealing with this, and we will be for quite some time.
So I'm going to reiterate something you said, because your volume did drop out. When one of the first things that you said was 6, 7, and 8, they were giving out mortgages to anybody who had a pulse. All of those things have been tightened up. They are not giving out mortgages as freely as they were. They got a little reckless. We follow, a lot of us in real estate follow some very good gurus who stay on the pulse of the financial aspect of real estate. And there were 2 important things that they keep highlighting. One is that a lot of lessons were learned. So this is only 13 or 14 years ago. So people who already owned homes still own homes, and they learned their lesson. And there are statistics, I'm going to goof them up, so I'm not going to give you the numbers, but it's over half of the mortgages in the country have at least half equity. So it's not the situation where if the value drops, you're hanging by a thread and you have no room in your house for losing a little bit. Most people have equity, and therefore they're going to hold their value. Well, that doesn't mean they're going to hold their value, but it means they're not going to be underwater. And I agree with what Laura was saying. It's a demand and supply issue, not an issue, not a negative, but it's because there's still so many people looking, and there's not enough houses to go around. In any environment, supply and demand create a higher price. I think that, especially in Connecticut, took so long to recover that these prices aren't necessarily overinflated, but maybe catching up is a more appropriate term. So I'll give you an example. We bought our house for $295,000 in 2006. We did some updates. My kitchen has not been updated. My bathrooms have not been updated, but we did mechanical kinds of things. We added air conditioning. We got a new roof. It's not all the pretty stuff, but it's expensive things. Our home only reappraised at 345. So this is 15 years later. And that's how deep of a dive Connecticut took. So I don't think it's going to be, most experts talk about the fact that the housing crisis was caused by issues in housing. The economy may be struggling a little bit, and they're increasing interest rates, gas is going up, things like that, but it is not a direct result or a direct correlation to housing. So housing is not going to take the hit. It's a different set of circumstances. I hope that was helpful. And again, we're not experts. We don't have crystal balls, but there's still,
It's part of inflation.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
inflation.
I'd actually add a little bit to that too, because we're actually seeing that on trade sides too, where it is a supply and issue demand too, where everybody, because they are home and they want to do renovations to their house, we're
Yes.
finding a lot of materials and things like that that are all back ordered, and those prices haven't been inflated. We didn't have that in 2008, so that's the other stuff too. So there's back orders on many different materials. There's back orders on a lot of different like lumber was a big thing that happened a while ago, where that was all basically that was all inflated into super high prices. That's starting to come down a little bit. There's also been stuff where people in the trades have been having a hard time getting windows or AC systems or heating systems and stuff like that. So there's a lot of people trying to do renovations on their home. And that's where we're coming out, where now even contractors are in high demand because there's just not enough contractors out there to do all the work that everybody wants to do to their house.
I think that's a very good point too. I think with everybody being home during COVID, that's another thing that caused a boom in people renovating their houses.
Mhm.
So because they were home looking at their four walls. So I
Yeah.
think people have reinvested in their homes
Making offices.
and making
Mhm.
offices. I think
Mm.
we have gotten smarter about using our space, and that will also help contribute to the prices holding, the houses holding their values, because a lot of people did updates. I mean, all of us, we put up a fence this year and it took us 9 months to get the freaking fence up. So we gave him half in March, and it's a reputable guy. It's somebody that we knew, and it was just getting materials. Let me see. All right, one more question. Okay. Can you please then speak to homes in certain areas that are needing a completely gut renovation and are probably worth 300,000 but are on the market for 800,000? Is it worth it to spend in those cases, or just people pushing this market? So
Question.
we didn't
Yeah.
do a lot of big introductions at the beginning about who we are and our backgrounds. And I want to brag about Laura a little bit. So Laura's our broker, and she and her husband have been rehabbing homes for 35 years. Notice we didn't use the word flipping. Her hair stands on end when people refer to her as a flipper. So, oh, I'm so sorry, your volume. She
You gotta be
rehabs with
closer,
love.
yeah.
So she and her husband have rehabbed about 35 homes. They're in Maine right now doing an inn, which maybe we'll give her a few minutes to brag about. But what do you think, Laura, about the ones that are going on the market for 800,000 that are only worth about 3?
They're totally pushing the market. And it's
Oh, yeah.
ridiculous that they would do that.
So I think the popularity of the flipping shows on TV, and people are understanding it more. And so they all want to get in the market. And what was happening even a couple of years ago is the amateurs get involved, and all of the, what's the right word I want to use? The people who do this professionally and go out and buy homes for rehab are getting outbid, because the others don't know exactly how to figure their numbers out, or what the margin is for making some money on it, and they're outbidding what the house is actually worth. So
Mhm.
everybody's playing in the real estate market now and kind of driving those up. And I think some sellers are getting greedy, and people will say, well, the realtor shouldn't let you list it at that. And our job is to represent our client. So if I have a client who says, listen, I want to put it on the market for $1 million, and I'm going to say, well, it's not really worth $1 million. I can show you why. And they're going to say, I don't care, put it out there and see what happens. And sometimes our job is just to do what our client is asking us to do.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of the homes really are being the gut jobs. There's one, I wish you weren't in Maine right now, Laura. There's one somebody brought to my attention. It's on the market for 300,000, and it's on a street that the homes are worth closer to $1 million. I have to look it up because I had the address written down, but it would take an awful lot to bring it back to its original state. But you know, that to me was realistic. That was 300,000, and somebody's going to need to put another 5 into it before it becomes what it should be. So I think there is a lot of artificial inflation on that.
Mhm.
I've also done some where I've done pre-inspections on houses where they might have been hand-me-downs for an estate property, and everyone's been trying to push their numbers because they know it's a good seller's market. And there's a lot of repairs to be done on that. So sometimes it's actually a good thing to do to see what you have for repairs, just so that you know, so that this way here, if the house stays on the market for too long, that Cathy and she could explain that better for you. If a house stays on the market too long, it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
So if there's been a couple home inspections and they've dropped out of it, and that stays on there, but
Mhm.
that's what some people will also take a look at too, is they'll see if the house has had a home inspection. If it hasn't had a home inspection, sometimes they've done what they call pre-home inspections, and we go in there, take a look at the house, try to give you an idea of what there is to do on the house, so that this way here you could better present it to the agents as saying you had a pre-inspection done and you've done all the most of the work for it. So it's less of people sometimes will get so scared about the home inspection and they get anxious about it. And that's why sometimes some people will do that too. It just takes out the anxiety and the stress out of that whole process there.
And we did start to talk about that, and I should have talked about that more. When you're getting your house ready to sell, people are asking what they should do. Always a good idea. have a home inspection, find out if there's anything that's really a safety hazard. We definitely, there's certain, not certain things. You are supposed to disclose anything that you know is a problem in the house as the realtor or as the homeowner. You're supposed to be honest and truthful. And, you know, knowing that somebody's going to come in to buy your home, if you've been living there a long time, there may be things that you've overlooked or need to be updated or aren't to code anymore. And a buyer is going to want to know those things, and you can address some of those in advance and maybe get a higher price for your house because you know that you've already, you know, your hot water tank is 12 years old and typically after 10, they're on their last leg, you know, so you want to replace the hot water tank, and then you know it's something to brag about when the house goes on the market. What else? All right, what else can we talk about? We pulled a whole bunch of data and some things we can talk about. Oh, well, one of the things Michelle and I spoke about earlier was talking about how things have changed in COVID times. So when you list your home and you still want to sell it, we're doing a lot more video walkthroughs. We're doing video tours and posting a lot more of those. We set up hand sanitizer, masks, booties. For a while, we weren't doing open houses, but then we kind of loosened that a little bit, and we were doing open houses where people signed up for time slots. And so you only had one party in the house at any given time. And as agents, I know that I have gone through some of the properties and I turn on all the lights, open the closet doors, make sure that everything is accessible so that buyers don't have to touch anything. You know, come through the house and do everything, and please don't touch anything. Don't touch any doorknobs. Don't do anything extra. Depending on where you live, things are sort of loosening up people's comfort level, and it all depends on the seller's comfort level or the buyer's comfort level. I have clients that, you know, we are still wearing masks everywhere we go out of courtesy to the sellers. But even when you know, I know the town is in Newington, they are talking about, or maybe it's statewide, they're talking about removing the masks in school. But it's still going to be comfort level on the people that you're dealing with. So maybe somebody's compromised and they're still going to wear masks. What else has changed since COVID?
And as
Say that again, Laura.
agents,
Masks?
as agents, we are totally abiding by whatever.
I'm sorry. I think it's a terrible connection.
You have to come closer, I think.
I'll type it.
Oh, say that again.
I will type.
Thank you. Somebody asked if you get your money back on a kitchen renovation. So we talk about the biggest bang for your buck is always going to be paint. And Laura is definitely our go-to on money back for money spent. Right now, the focus is definitely on kitchens and baths.
I would definitely say kitchen more priority than a bathroom.
Laura says, as agents, we are always going by what our sellers would like to do in respect to COVID. Yes. So money spent on kitchens is always good. Sometimes it's a matter of, we have to be informative to our buyers and to our sellers. So we should be your experts. And sometimes the money is better spent on infrastructure and mechanicals. A furnace that's the original furnace from the 1950s, while it's still functional, people are going to come in and see that and go, I don't like that. And they can't, there's a little sliver of gray area where it's still functional, but the inspector is going to write, what would you say? Here we go. What would the inspector say? It's a 50-year-old furnace. It's still functioning. It heats my house every winter. What are you going to write in the
We're
report?
definitely going to write down that it's past its life expectancy, and that it's going to be nearing. Either you're going to have to put a lot of money into repairing it all the time, or you're going to have to think about the money to replace it. So that's, again, so if I have a customer that I'm walking around for doing the home inspection and we see that they have old mechanicals, I know some buyers just look at dollar signs, and they see big ticket items like that. So if they see the roof that's a little bit aged, they see that the boiler is a little bit aged, they see the hot water heater. Now, these are the things that we need to live. I'm at the kitchen and bath is, we do need a bathroom. I don't think I want to live in a house without a bathroom anymore. And the kitchen, we all need to eat. So, but the thing is, if it's functional and it's operational and there's no leaking or anything else like that, those sometimes people could do that in the future. It's still operational. And the thing is that you need heat, you need hot water. So those things are kind of the necessities. And if you see that the buyers have a lot of the necessities that are not met, I think they might get cold feet a little bit. That's what I have seen.
So people like to do the pretty stuff, but you're going to get more money if all the mechanicals are sound. And you know, that's where you talk to your agent about where to spend your money. Laura is typing for us again. Depends on what you spend on the kitchen renovation. Buyers do want to come in and see bright white cabinets. So painting a cabinet, you will get your money back if you order cabinets. Good luck getting them in a reasonable time frame. And you will be paying a lot due to supply. You will most likely not be seeing a return on investment. Is it popular to get the seller to give any money back in closing? Okay, so something that used to happen all the time. It was very common to ask for the seller to help pay the closing costs. And you have to reconfigure this for the sellers because they get upset when you ask them about closing costs. If you put your house on the market for $250,000 and I have somebody who comes in and offers you $265,000, but they want $5,000 back, you're getting $260,000 for your house. But the money's not coming out of your pocket, the $5,000 that you gave back. The buyer is taking out a mortgage and they are borrowing their own money. So it became this way of looking at it that you were asking the seller to give you money. Let's say the house is on the market for $250,000 and they offer you $250,000, but they're asking for $10,000 back. You're only going to get $240,000, but maybe your house is only worth $240,000 and that's a good price for your house. Your agent overpriced it. The seller has to keep in mind that they're not giving you that money. The buyer is actually borrowing their own money and they're asking permission for you to sign it back over to them. So what it really comes down to is your net, your bottom, what you're going to walk away with, what the seller is going to walk away with. And there's really a lot of, it's almost like being a therapist. Would you say, Laura? I feel like sometimes I'm a therapist. And you have to massage people and it's not, how do I want to say this? You want to make everybody feel like they got a good deal walking away from it. And sometimes people have a preconceived notion about, well, I'm giving them their money or they can't ask for that back, but it comes from their funding. There's a lot of little ways to play with the numbers on that piece of paper to make it work. Laura says money back at closing will also come into play during the appraisal. So this is where you need a very good agent to walk you through the potentials. I'm afraid I'm going to get into the weeds if I start doing this. So I'm going to try to give a general overview. When you put down money on a house, you go in knowing I'm going to put $10,000 down. I'm going to put down 5% when it comes to the closing, and my total price for this house is $250,000. The bank then sends an appraiser and tells you what the house is really worth. Is the bank taking out a good gamble to give you a loan for $250,000 for this house. Is it worth $250,000? And if the bank says yes, great. If the bank says no, it's really only worth $245,000, now you're at a point where you have to renegotiate with the seller. So the people who are overbidding, the appraisers have to catch up with that. And the appraisers have to agree that it's worth that amount of money. And there are games we can play with the money and take it out of your deposit and put it on the back end, and you are paying the difference between what the bank says it's worth and what you're willing to pay for it. Not everybody has that liquid asset. So that's when you have a really good agent who can kind of break down your options for making an offer. Sometimes that saves the deal. We just had a lot of fun with a condo, and I say that sarcastically. Do you want to tell the story or no?
About the
condo where the FHA changed the rules. So
yeah, we did.
this is, well, so we mentioned it, but it's in regards to the appraisal, and FHA loans, VA loans, CHFA loans are all overseen by the federal government. They're money that's, the government wants people to get the all-American dream and buy their own property, but they have a few more rules and regulations around them. Well, they decided to change the rules and regulations in midstream while we were in the middle of a contract. So it caused a whole kerfluffle that we had to kind of sort out. But we learned an awful lot, and it was an awesome transaction, and the seller's happy and the buyer's happy, and we made it work. So it's caused us to really be creative in going out to win. Because Laura's volume, she's having such a tough time with audio, she's texting us in the chat room. Appraisals are also very subjective. Had a home appraisal go from $240,000 to $268,000 within a matter of 3 weeks. So appraisals, depending on the appraiser that you get, determines the value of the property. They have, if you've ever seen an appraisal for your own home or buying or whatever, it's a very big packet, and there's a lot of things for them to look at. But it's like in any profession, everybody is not the same. Some are better than others. And you have the right as a buyer to challenge it, unless you are an FHA buyer or other government buyer. An FHA appraisal stays with the property. I believe it's for 3 months. I know it used to be 6 months. I believe that's been changed. That's the only reason I say that, because I recently had lunch with a lender, and that was one of the things we discussed, was that it sticks to the property for 3 months. So anybody else coming forward to buy that property has to abide by that appraisal.
Right.
But you can challenge it if there's a mistake. You can challenge it. Oh, Laura's saying the house was FHA and the buyer did challenge it. So this is where I was going. It's very difficult to change an FHA. Was there an error in the appraisal? Because if you can point out an error, like it was a wrong number of rooms, wrong age of the house, something that's totally inaccurate, you can challenge it. But it does take a lot of pushing. So you can always question it. The home was FHA. Okay. So that's the bank's way of assuring that they're getting their money's worth. Can you please speak to the best options for people wanting to buy and restore a historic home? Ah, okay. So when it comes to dealing with a historic home, Louis, what's different about a historic home? When somebody uses that term, what's going to be different?
So there's a lot of different things with historic homes. So you're definitely going to be looking at, sometimes if you get into a very, very historic home, sometimes the construction that was built back then, sometimes it would go out in the backyard and chop down a tree and build a house with it. It's a lot different. Like you talk about 1900s, nails were not really, you couldn't go to Home Depot, get nails. So a lot of them are actually constructed with mortise and tenon type of construction, which is very common back then. So you're gonna find a lot of different construction techniques. There's also a lot of stuff that with some of the older stuff where you have safety stuff where you're gonna have knob and tube wiring, sometimes asbestos. So you got to be careful with some of that stuff because that's also going to cause a big issue with doing a home inspection if you have any of those type of items. And actually, if you have like knob and tube, sometimes insurance or mortgage wise, you might not even be able to get that towards the house. So there are some things that do come up on a home inspection that you do want to be aware of with those historic homes.
So in that note, what I would definitely say is make sure you have an inspector who knows their historic homes. That's an important piece of it because it took me a while to learn this and I relied on Laura and Michael, her husband. Very often there's knob and tube. You can still see remnants, but they've replaced it downstairs. You know, there's remnants in the attic and I had a difficult time determining whether it was still active or not. I see Laura's back.
Yes, and she's
Oh.
on as host.
Okay, so she may be, I think she switched tools in the hopes that she could do better speaking. So as
Can
far,
you hear now?
that's better.
Yes.
Okay.
So I just want to go back to this question, make sure I'm understanding what this person is asking. It's Pam. Speak to the best options for people wanting to buy and restore a historic home. So there are loans, and this would be a good question for a loan officer, 203Ks. And so you can take out a loan for what the anticipated completed value of the property will be. Correct me if I'm wrong, Laura. I don't know if you haven't done a lot of these, I know. But a 203.
Yes, my point would be, my question of Pam would be, is she restoring the home because she loves the home and she wants to live there forever? Or is she restoring the home in hopes that she would sell it again? So if she wants to live there forever, then by all means do it. Right now, as Louis was saying earlier, lumber, all materials have skyrocketed. They're starting to come back down somewhat, but as far as is she going to get her money back? Probably not on a historic home, because if you are doing it to sell it again, it's tough. Living forever, absolutely, Pam, then go for it. If it's a labor of love and you're going to live there, then do it, because it's the sweat equity part of it. But any rehabber that wants to do a home right now, good luck to you. That's why we're in Maine right now.
So somebody very kindly sent me a question separately and asked if it's in a historic district, because that also raises other questions. You have to follow by,
There's certain guidelines.
there's
and
guidelines. Anything that's
restrictions.
visible from the street, at least my experience has been in Connecticut. I grew up in in Wethersfield, and I know Old Wethersfield. I think these are the same rules for most historic districts. If it's visible from the street, you have to abide by, you know, the windows, the color of the siding, or the color of the wood, the roof, all those things are important. I do know that in certain areas, for example, Hartford, they have areas where there is funding and support for historical renovations. So if you want to talk to your town building department, there's actually money, grants, funding, because they want people to spend money and restore things. So that's a great opportunity to do that as well. There was something else I was going to say. Maybe that was it, that there's just talk to a couple of different lenders. I think I would make the point that you speak to a lender, and I know it feels like a lot of paperwork, and I'm not talking just to Pam, but to everybody in general, because you send them a lot of paperwork. You are not married to that lender until, you know, I don't want to be unkind to lenders, because we're in the same boat. You know, we don't get paid until we close. Lenders are the same way. But shop, because they have different tools, they have different products. There are some lenders that deal with more of the renovation loans and are experts in it. There are other lenders that maybe do more of the FHA loans, or, you know, there's all different kinds of products that can help you. So I would encourage you to do that. More questions coming in. Any appraisal regulations that are designed to avoid lowballing the value of a home illegally, such as the scandal that made the news last year? Appraisal regulations. I'm not sure I know which, there have been so many scandals, I don't know which one you're referring to. To avoid lowballing the value of a home. Oh, to allow people to buy them cheap? Like people with lots of money who, you know, get the appraisers to value it really cheaply. I don't know. Well, it's all supposed to be regulated by the Office of Policy and Regulation. But I don't know who oversees the appraisers. There are a lot of hands in that, and somebody should be slapping their hands, whether it's the bank or whether they all had to be in cahoots together, because there are too many eyes on it for it to be really ridiculous. So, you know, count on your realtor to try to keep everybody honest. Any new Connecticut regulations on people adding ADUs? Not for renting.
Accessory dwelling units.
That
That would be a town by town thing.
I was just going to say, each town handles that differently. And as we had a conversation this week, it also seems to vary year to year, depending on the public outcry or the public push. Racially motivated. I'm not sure which one you are referring to. I may have heard about it, but was it where something was lowballed in order to allow somebody to purchase it? I'm trying to think of how an appraiser would or inflated it so that it was more valuable. To avoid lowballing the value of a home illegally. I don't know. There are a lot of rules and regulations in real estate as far as equal rights for people to purchase. We are under obligation to not discriminate. That doesn't mean people don't do it, but we are not supposed to be participating in anything that favors or steering or all of those things are against the law. People could lose their licenses over it, and that's what should happen if somebody did that. As far as appraisers, I don't know enough about that to comment on it, so I won't. So it is bringing me back to the historic district, racial stuff. I know there are a lot of programs in a lot of, I don't want to say urban areas, but for example, Hartford, there is definitely a more upscale end of Hartford, and there are a lot of programs for people to buy. So I'm going back to it because more stuff is popping into my head. So I know they have even a college program. If your kids go through the Hartford Public Schools and you buy your home in Hartford, there are incentives for keeping them in the schools and money for college. So real estate winds up getting impacted by a lot of these different rules and regulations. So depending on the town that you're moving to, you want to get a realtor who really knows the ins and outs of towns and talk to the town hall. I guess you would talk to the town clerk or the building department and find out about incentives for renovations and buying in a particular town. There's a lot of towns that encourage the teachers to live in the town that they live in, and they have different programs for them to buy homes. So you could look at what you do for a living. You could look at, I know they try to stay away from the ethnic backgrounds, but there are certain, maybe it's, I won't touch that one. I'm not sure about the ethnic backgrounds, but I know that they want to encourage teachers and police officers to live in the towns where they work. And there's a lot of funds for renovations in historic districts, depending on where you buy. So explore those options. You can certainly ask us questions afterwards, and I'll see what I can find out about the town that you're talking about.
Yeah, but if you have a historic house and you're thinking you're gonna put siding on there and new windows, that's really not gonna happen. They're very regulated with that type of stuff. The windows have to look very similar to what there's in there, and they're usually special order.
Expensive. Yeah.
And then also, if you have wood siding on there, you can't really change it to anything drastic. They have a lot of rules and regulations with that stuff too.
Mhm.
So you do want to find out from the historic building, historical society, if that is a historical building, to see what their rules and regulations are, before you get into a property like that, just so that you're aware and know what you can do and what you cannot do.
Mhm. Right.
How are we doing on time? Actually, this has been going, this has been great. I feel like we haven't stopped talking yet, but
Questions?
I don't know what other directions to take this in. We can talk about so typically it's been 45 days from the time that you make a purchase to close. COVID has expanded some of that depending on, I know for a while it was home inspectors are improving. It seemed like for a short time, we were having a tough time getting an inspection within the first 2 weeks, which is what we typically try to do when you make a purchase. Appraisers were running behind. We were having a tough time getting appraisers. So it could go out for 60 days, but typically it's 45 days from start to finish. We try to play that angle too with certain lenders. They can get it done faster. So when you're going to buy a home, you always want to find out what the sellers want in order to meet their needs. So that's another way to win an offer. You know, your agent should be reaching out to the other agent and saying, okay, what's most important to the seller? Is it more important that they have extra time to move? Is it more important that they get an offer closed in 30 days because they're already moved out? Is it more important that they get more money? And so usually one of those three things, how fast it can, well, two things, I guess, how fast or slow it can close, and money. Those are usually the two key components to a seller. You know, one's usually outranks the other. Do you have to put a new?
You do not have to.
No.
No.
And 10 years old isn't bad. So, and Laura, please correct me because you do this much more often than I do. But I believe one of my home inspectors, maybe Louis knows this, might have been Bob. Most roofs post 2000 are minimally 25-year roofs.
So they have two different types of roofs that's usually out there. If you're talking about asphalt shingles, there are different materials out there, and they're all different lifespans. But typically a lot of what we see up here is asphalt shingles. I think that's what you're referring to. So they have 3-tab shingles. Usually the lifespan for 3-tab shingles is anywhere between like 15 to 25 years. And then they have the newer shingles that you'll see, and they look like they have a little dimension to them. They call them 3-tab shingles. And those are actually, you probably could get about 30 to 40 years with a 3-tab shingle. And again, it all depends upon sun exposure. It depends upon weather conditions. So all those ages too. And it depends upon if you put an overlay, if it's the second roof on top of another one, that's going to shorten the lifespan of the roof too. So if you have 2 layers on there, that's definitely going to make a big difference in that, because you're usually going to have all those numbers that I just gave to you.
Now, here's an angle that we have used with a multifamily that we were concerned about the roof. We reached out to the insurance company, and there was enough storm damage that they could justify replacing the roof. So sometimes, you know, if you don't use your insurance policy very often, if you haven't misused it, that's always an angle to pursue with something like the roof, because in New England, we certainly get enough storms that if they can prove that there's been storm damage, it's possible that you can have the roof replaced.
Well, for sidewalks, I was going to say,
Sidewalks.
So sidewalks too, if you have a big, huge differential in there, they are going to consider that a trip hazard, and that can sometimes be a safety hazard. So that sometimes we'll come up with something like that. So that's the only thing I can think of with kind of with a sidewalk would have to be replaced or be repaired, is if there's a big deflection on there that could cause it a trip hazard.
Is the sidewalk town?
Well, it
It
depends.
depends.
Yeah, if, so the sidewalk is usually town property,
Right.
but maybe sidewalk to the house. Somebody was
Oh.
asking for funny stories too. We had a conversation earlier about some of the stories that we could tell that are entertaining. I can start with one. It wasn't a COVID story, but actually I have two good ones. One of them was being attacked by a dog while showing a house. It's not funny, but my poor buyer was so shaken. I didn't hear from him. The tenant was not supposed to be home. And, I knocked and we waited and I heard a dog, but very often people will leave their dog in a cage. And, you come in and show the house and the dog barks. And this woman was still home, fortunately for me, I guess, because I opened the door and a dog went for my knee. And he was, truthfully, he was doing what he was supposed to be doing and he didn't get me very badly. And he responded to his owner right away. But my poor buyer was so shaken, I think he almost passed out. So the poor guy. What was your story? What was your COVID story?
Oh, I have a bunch of, I would actually say, but with a lot of contractors out there, I saw a lot of stuff on Facebook and a lot of people were getting down on contractors and basically with the whole bathroom situation. The bathroom situation was a real thing. That was definitely weird. I had to kind of find either supermarkets or I had to find parks that had porta potties in them because all the businesses and restaurants were actually all closed and no one was allowing to use their bathrooms.
Oh my gosh.
So it was a real thing. And then I just remember too, also the roads were absolutely empty. So we were considered essential by the government and we were out there going out to different people's houses. And I just remember there being maybe like 5 or 6 people on the road traveling during that time when it was the height of COVID. So that was kind of some of the interesting things that happened during COVID that I don't know if it's funny for everybody else, but it was kind of funny for me.
Do you have any good ones yet?
I have the one where I was going into an empty or vacant trailer home or mobile home, and the floors were like a roller coaster. The subflooring needed to be replaced. It was very hilly. And as I was walking down the hallway to go to the first bedroom, and this was a video call with the client. They don't live here in Connecticut. They live out of state. And as I was going through it down the hall, there was a white tail sticking out from the door. So I, of course, screamed on the phone with them and they're like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Is everything all right? And I'm like, okay, I turned the camera more and went to step forward and it was a stuffed cat. In the door. And I thought it was like a mouse or a cat or,
Something's gonna jump out and get you.
Yes.
Well, Laura, you've had squatters in some of the homes you've been in or had.
That was the story that I was thinking of. Showing
So-
a house in Hartford, a multifamily, and we were walking through the home and we heard some noise and I'm thinking, okay, is this the wind blowing through some open window? And then all of a sudden, a gentleman comes up from the basement and I told him to leave and do I need to call the police? And he left.
I'm trying to think.
I think also when I first started out, it was really funny too, because everybody was so scared. So at that time too, I gave away a lot of my masks to the healthcare workers because there was a shortage of that. So the only thing I had to go in people's homes that were very scared about COVID was a respirator. So I'm going in there with gloves, booties, and a respirator. And then at some points, people were like, well, what about like if you touch something? So I actually ended up to this house with a Tyvek suit, a respirator on, gloves, and booties. It looked like I was somebody and I came outside and someone was like, are you from the health department? Is there something wrong? So that was an interesting one too.
I did have somebody show up at we had a sit down at the table to do a listing appointment and somebody came to it with a gun because the two family members were not seeing eye to eye, and one threatened the other, and the husband stepped in and said, well, I'm packing. If I need to resolve it, I will. And I said, you know what? I think we're done for today. Let's all take a breather and we'll come back and do this another day. So that didn't end well. That was the only time I really got concerned.
Speaking of being done for the day, I think people are leaving the room.
Oh, okay. All right. The only other thing that really got impacted, and this is how our conversation started, was rentals as well, is the price of rentals have gone up incredibly. There are so few rentals left. I think people who owned rental properties wanted to get into the market and they were selling them. So unfortunately, rentals are sky high. And I think that's one of the reasons so many people are buying, is because your mortgage 9 times out of 10 is going to wind up being less than what you're going to pay for the rentals right now. So
and I have seen a lot of people that have, you know, little credit or no credit. They cannot get a rental because the landlords require a certain credit score. And, you know, people get really upset because everybody's desperate. I see it all over Facebook, different town Facebook pages where they're looking for a rental, looking for a rental, looking for a rental. And there's just not enough.
And I think, you know, sometimes it is almost easier to get a mortgage than a rental, because there are programs for people with lower credit scores. So if anybody's listening to this and you're worried that your credit score isn't a perfect 700 or 800, there are a lot of programs available. And they also, some people still think you need 20% down before you can buy a house, and that's not the case. So interview a few lenders, ask your realtor. We'll connect you to a lender first. I hope that's what you were expecting it was going to be. We kind of tried to hit on a lot of different things that happened over the last few years and project what's going to happen. But again, we're in the same boat as everybody else. We're looking at information we're being given, and we hope it's accurate. And nobody saw this coming, this COVID coming. And of course that threw everybody for a loop. But
Bottom line, if you're a buyer, buy now. If you're a seller, list now.
Yeah. I would, you know, really take advantage of where we are. I think it's a great time to do that. There are so many buyers out there, and we just don't have enough properties. So we encourage you to think about that.
And if you're looking for a rental, start now.
Yeah. If you need one in the next 6 months, I would start looking now.
Yeah, just in case. Some listings out there could be for a month or two out.
Yeah.
It may not be very common at the moment, but it's worth trying and starting.
Yeah, because I think COVID has changed rentals since that time too. So
100%. And if you need to clean up your credit, start doing it now. We have people for that as well.
Yeah. I mean, ask us. We're even if we're not your realtor, we can point you in the right direction. But of course, we'd love to be your realtor. But you know, it's
An inspection.
An inspection. I'm sorry, Louis. I can't believe that. It's tough. He was not shy to sit in front of my pink backdrop, our pink backdrop, and be part of the team today. So you know, it's good to have a team that you're used to working with, and you know how they work, and you trust them, and that's what you look for when you're shopping for real estate. You want people that you know.
All right, Cathy and company, we're so happy to have you all tonight. If anybody has any questions, they can contact me at the library. I am happy to get any questions answered for you. Cathy, if you can put something quick in the chat, I know the chat will go away when we stop the recording. And also Louis is from Magnified Home Inspections. If you have any questions after, we can also get you in touch with Louis. I hope everybody enjoyed tonight's presentation. I know we had a few laughs, but I know there's a lot of great information that came out tonight. I am going to stop the recording now, and then if anybody has any last questions, we can take them. And I do see your information has come up in the chat. So I will stop the recording now. Hold on just a second.